Um,
Go ahead, Nicole.
so I was going to say the module that you and I worked on together at length was on sales, and I had implemented that like immediately. The same day that I took that module on the sales, and I've been doing it ever since. So I know I don't know if it's been 4 or 5 years, or I don't know how long it's been actually, but it's the process that I use. I've trained my other attorneys to use that process. At the time, it was really just me, and I think maybe I had just brought on another attorney at the time, and so I was really looking for something to train her on, to say, okay, this is how we, conduct a consult, and this is how we close a deal. But I didn't have, as much as I love systems, I didn't have like that sales process formulated. So it was really helpful.
Yes, yes. And so, welcome everyone to the Lifestyle Lawyer Revolution podcast, which is another fun way for us to interview people who've taken the 2HLL program, which now, Nicole, it's actually only 3 years. Doesn't it? I heard you mention 4 or 5 years ago. Now, we launched in 2022, and you were one of the very first people to enroll with us. Tell us a little bit about your firm, what state you're in, who you serve.
Yes. Well, I am the owner of Loughlin Law PA. It's a boutique practice in Boca Raton, Florida. We practice throughout the state. We're mostly virtual, have attorneys practicing in different areas of the state, but our main office is in Boca Raton. And yeah, it feels like, I guess the pandemic as a whole feels kind of like it was 5 years ago. And I felt like that, the building of my firm sort of began during that time. So it's only been 3 years. But in any event, since that time, from the day that, we first met and I implemented the strategies that you taught me, I've been using them ever since.
So what were you doing in consults before we taught the sales process that we teach?
I was probably talking too much in legalese. I was probably explaining, high level legal concepts and just showing potential clients that I knew what I was talking about, and I knew how to, and sounding smart. And and clients don't really want to hear that. They assume that you understand the law and the legal concepts. They're not looking um to understand like step by step what the process is going to be, and like how you bake the cake, right? They just want to know that you can bake the cake and that it's going to be a really good cake. And so I was having a hard time, I think, um putting every single client through the same exact process during the consult. I was tailoring every consult for that client, which is good in a sense. I mean, you definitely want to read the room and modify from there. You don't, if somebody is, on their phone walking through the grocery store, whipping out a spreadsheet is probably not going to be the best sales tactic for that particular person. But from, years of coaching and putting systems in place and automating things, the one thing that I was really weak on was closing. And my coach had always told me that you are not going to understand where your weakness is if you are putting every single person through a different sales process. So that's where I was like, the intake process, everything up to meeting with me was standard operating procedure. Everybody gets that same treatment, but then, the actual consult was largely, whatever I felt like that particular client needed, that day. So the sales module for me was the most important. A lot of the, I was already implementing webinars. I had already built funnels and things like that, but the actual closing strategies are what took me to the next level.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting. It's so hard as attorneys, to put processes in place. I think we're so afraid that once we sit down in front of the client, we just like you said, we want to tailor it for that person. The problem there is that if you don't have a consistent process in place, you don't know, why did this person hire me? Why did this person not hire me? And it could be any one of a million things if you're changing it up all the time. And I know that, you know, eh, we tend to shrug at having a process in place because we think, well, I'm going to lose some people along the way. What if I lose that person or this person? And what we teach in the program is, you're going to lose people along the way, no matter what you do, right? We talk about this in terms of, do you reveal your fees over the phone? Yes or no? You're going to lose some people if you reveal your fees because they're going to think they're too high, and you're going to lose some people if you don't because they're going to be annoyed that you haven't revealed your fees. So, you know, pick a process that supports you as the attorney that's going to protect your time. And then just know that you're going to lose some people regardless, but at least you protected your time.
Yeah, and I think also I was afraid to kind of go through, in depth all of the personal details, on a consult call. I had already, built into my process, I was sending out a questionnaire prior to the consult. And so learning to kind of go through that process and the value that that gives to the client to say we're going to go over all of your assets, we're going to talk about what you have, how you have things titled, and what that means for you, what your estate looks like if you went with a will, what your estate looks like if you went with a trust, and what's the cost differential. Like being able to do that in a way that is providing value as opposed to being scary for the client to say, well, I'm not sure I want to give you all that information yet. And it's like, well, you don't have to, but then you're walking away from this call with some high level information and it's not tailored for you specifically. And in that case, the webinar is fine, right? Because you're going to learn in the webinar, um, you know, what a will is, what a trust is, all of the ancillary essential living documents, all of that, and how they can apply to you. The consult is really meant to kind of dig into your specific situation. So I think I was afraid to do that before, and then realized that it's really an added benefit.
Yeah, it's actually, I think, very eye-opening, demonstrating something that isn't personal to you. It's like, okay, maybe you understand it from an intellectual perspective, but then all of a sudden you throw in, well, these are your accounts and these are your family members, and this is what it would look like under each option. And everybody is going to have an opinion about that. Maybe they're okay with how things would play out with a will, which is fine, or maybe they would prefer a trust. We just want our clients making a decision based on education and empowerment.
Yeah. But also it walks the attorney through the process, is like, you can have those few minutes in the beginning to talk about, the client and what their goals are, what made them decide to schedule. And then, when you get to that custom part, there's still a process, right? There's still a process to go through. Like, these are the downsides. These are the options that you have if you have minor children. This is what you get with a will, this is what you get with a trust. So even though that whole segment of the consult is customized, there's a process for the attorney to walk through. And I found that very helpful in training my attorneys, especially a newer attorney that I hired who had never done an estate planning consult before. Giving her that roadmap, I think made her feel so comfortable. And also having her sit in on, like, probably 100 calls, I feel like. But going through that process, it's like you're not going to get lost in the consult, right? You know where your next step is.
Well, there's an actual agenda, which I also thought, and for those of you who are all listening, this is what we teach in the 2-hour lifestyle lawyer course. This is a big part of what our program teaches. Is just simply how to host that initial consultation, what to say, what to bring, how much talking do you do, how much talking does the client do. etc. And we teach this in the course, and it gives you a roadmap and sort of an agenda. What I found before I had any kind of a roadmap was the consult was sort of just kind of willy-nilly, and there was no structure to it. And then it was like maybe a little bit awkward because you just didn't have anything really, there was no path. Where, the way that we teach it in the course is, you've got your agenda, you've got a specific thing to do along the way, and there's a clear path that the clients can see. You're sort of moving them towards making this decision. And they're learning along the way. And I don't know if this happens to you, but most of the time at the end of the peace of mind planning session, my clients say something like, I never understood this before, or thank you for drawing this out. Do you start to hear that as well?
Well, I have my clients take notes,
Mhm.
and they say, "Oh, I need to check on that," or "I hadn't thought of that." They come prepared, right? Because we tell them leading up to the meeting what to have. But yeah, I think a lot of times there are, things that are overlooked, or and everybody comes to these appointments thinking their situation is simple, and they just have a very straightforward wishes, and then you start to kind of like dig in, and there's so many, nuances, and it's just like, well, that's a complication actually, and or there's not an easy workaround. We have some laws in Florida that you can't draft around, and you have to kind of deal with it, which, our homestead rules are an example of that, where, you can have a well thought out plan, but your homestead's going to go to your spouse and your children. Like, it's going to happen. So we have to find a way to, figure out, like, are there any options there? And, how do we draft a plan around that?
Yeah, yeah, and this is why we think it's so important to spend some time with your clients beyond, with your prospects anyway, beyond a 15-minute call, because you can tell you can teach a little bit in a 15-minute call, but I think really sitting down with an attorney for an hour with doing what you provide, which is this full hour consult, going over their numbers and their family and everything, that's needed to really have it sink in just how important this work is. And why you don't want to be doing it on AI. Do you have some of your clients come in and ask, can I just do this on LegalZoom, or can ChatGPT do it for me?
My associate just had that happen, where the client was kind of like wondering what the value of having a lawyer was, and really, I think, even like offensive in the line of questioning on that. And I talked with my attorney about it, of all the things, that, like, when you practice probate, you see, how these things play out. And sometimes it's just the tiniest little error. I just had a consult where, person passed away, they have no children, they want to leave a gift to their stepchildren, and the will's not self-proved, and it's in another state, and there's only a copy of it. And it's like all of
And it's
these
only a
things.
copy.
Yeah. And it's like, this happens, all the time. These hypothetical, situations. Well, what if? I've seen it, I've seen like that one little tiny error in Palm Beach County. If your notary doesn't underline how they identified the witness in the self-proving affidavit, you need to go get an oath of witness or a proof of will. And by the way, those need to be executed in the presence of a clerk of court, or you have to get a commissioner appointed in another state. So there's that little underline, so there's a lot of room for error in getting that, doing those things on your own. But I will say with AI, I've had clients find me using
Yes.
AI. And so for that, I'm very grateful. I don't think in fact, I'm going to write a nice message to ChatGPT, thanking them for recommending me to so many people recently. And how do I continue to do that?
Well, ChatGPT recommends me, and it recommends 2HLL. And Nicole, do you want to know why? It's because we do really good work, and the community knows that, and AI picks up on that. I've been doing a lot of research on this, especially for our 2HLL community. And I think it's really, really interesting that even like 12 months ago, whatever your footprint was on the internet, it was valued and judged a certain way. And now we're into the era of AI, you're getting recommendations, and we're getting recommendations at 2HLL because they're pulling not just from like a couple of websites, they're pulling everything and then making an independent, recommendation that you're trustworthy and that you have authority and whatnot. And so AI is great for that. And I'm not surprised that you're getting referred on that. And we're actually teaching our lawyers how to make sure that your online footprint is trustworthy and sort of appealing to AI so that you get recommended, because now that's what everyone's trying to do. So it sounds like that's working for you.
It is, and it does feel, like merit based, right? That, that they're really looking to say, well, people seem to really like to work with this law firm. There's something there. Not this law firm publishes blogs once a week and, and it keeps it fresh in the algorithm and things like that. So it does seem to be, giving an edge to people that are actually out there doing good work, as opposed to having a great marketing machine, which do both. Like you don't need to do one or the other. You should have a great marketing machine and you should also be doing great work. And then boom, those are the results you get.
It does seem to reward the right people, though. I get what you're saying. It does seem to sort of, it just pulls from so many places, and then it kind of connects the dots that I think that people wouldn't necessarily connect as well. So yeah, I think AI is going to have, you don't want to use it for your will, right? You don't want to do that. We're not recommending that. But I think for research, for helping with marketing, copy, things like that, just for cleaning up client emails, I think that the lawyers who behind the scenes are embracing it to speed things up, to focus, to help with copy and things like that, so that the time that we do spend, that 1 hour that we do spend at the consult, that 90 minutes that we spend at the design meeting, we're really focusing laser like on helping our client, because we're not wasting time behind the scenes doing things that AI can now do pretty easily.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, I think it's definitely made me more efficient. I'm not scared that it's going to replace me, you know?
I'm not scared either. And I think that we know this because we know when we meet with our clients one-to-one. Do you do your signings in person?
Sometimes, it depends. I give my clients, an option, so it's kind of like a hybrid approach. Going back to what you were saying about the 15-minute call, I don't do that. I think in the beginning, I thought that with a 15-minute discovery call was like the way to do it to save me, time. But it ended up costing me more time because everybody got 15 minutes and everybody's 15 minutes turned into 30 minutes or an hour. And they weren't prepped for the call. You know what I mean? So it was just exhausting. So I would much rather give my value up front in a consult than give every single person, 15 minutes for free. I do my consults for free, but we do screening so that it cuts down. And we do give a price range over the phone. I don't want people to wait 2 weeks sometimes to meet with me and then get to the meeting and say, well, if I had known it was that much, I wouldn't have waited. So to me, that's important to get that out there in the beginning. If it's just going to be an absolute barrier, I want them to know. Um, so yes, during our consult, we talk about that. The fees include an in-person signing, and they can come to my office. I'll witness, notarize. But we have a lot. We serve clients throughout the state. We have a lot of people who are snowbirds and that are not always here. And we have a lot of families that have kids, and my office hours are their office hours, and it's really hard to come in during the day and sign a will during their workday. So anyway, we have a hybrid approach. So they can come to the office and sign. If they want to do it remotely, I discount the plan a little bit to do it that way. It gives them some freedom in their budget to have a professional notary come out to them. I'm not organizing it at my office. I'm not going to I prefer to, work from home when I can. So, I don't mind passing along that discount to them. And then they still get it professionally signed. They don't have to leave their home, and we get a copy of everything to review before we, you know, take the next step, record any deeds or anything like that.
That's one of the benefits of working with Nicole's firm. Anywhere you live in Florida, she can work with you, and she can work with you without ever meeting in person, because basically what Nicole is saying is that you can sign your estate planning documents at home. You still need to have the witnesses and the notary, and she'll help you with that to make sure that everything is there. Um, but this is one of the nice things about working in a virtual world these days. The documents still need to be signed with the proper legal formalities, but you can do it at home. And
Yeah.
yeah, so that works. So do most of your clients choose the at-home option to sign?
Yes, most of them. And then I try to be very clear on it that it's not like, the pricing that we give is inclusive of the signing. It's a discount if it makes sense for them, right? So it's not like everybody gets a discount, right? It's the pricing is or whatever our normal fee is for each package. However, if they want to work virtually, we print everything out, we put it in a portfolio, we mail it to them for signing, and then they hire separately the notary company. They don't have to hire, anybody that we recommend. And we don't get any benefit for recommending a particular company. We just, recommend people that do a good job. And we tend to not have any errors when they use a professional notary. I tell clients, I'm like, look, yes, I can give you the virtual pricing and you can have your friend do the notary, but it's a lot. And if they make a mistake, you have to go back and ask for another favor. And I'm like, so it's better, in my opinion, to get the professional notary to come out to you. You can do it after hours, you can do it at your home, do it at the kitchen counter with your kids around. You don't have to take any time off of work, and it's worth it to do it that way. I would say most of our clients do that. I maybe go into the office a couple times a month to do just, and similar to how you teach to do it, block schedule them so that you have like a signing day. So I'm not coming in randomly at random times during the day in between virtual meetings, going in for an office signing. It's just not efficient. But I do try to stack them. So when I do have a few signings, I try to get them all done, in one day.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a tip for lawyers listening. If you are hosting the signings in person, which I do most of the time, but I just block off 1 or 2 Fridays per month and we knock out 3 or 4 or 5 on any given day. It works for the clients. It's kind of fun. They come in. It's a celebration. It's a big deal when they've gotten everything signed and it's legally valid. And I always tell them, go have a celebratory lunch or go get a drink now to celebrate. But you want the documents to be signed with the proper legal formalities. And ironically, this is one of the things that most of the public doesn't connect the dots on, which is understandable. But it's not just what the documents say, which is in and of itself. There's a lot there. You've got to get the legal language right, but then on top of it, you've got to have it signed and executed properly, or else a court's going to throw it out. You had mentioned earlier that only a copy of a will was available. Many people don't realize you have to have the original. So there's no point in really DIYing it if you're going to risk any of the what are they called, landmines that could pop up.
Yeah, well, anytime I've had to admit a copy, it's obviously much more work, right? It's when you have the original, you're just asking the court to admit the original, right? There's nothing suggesting that it was revoked by the testator, but there's a presumption that if a will is lost or destroyed, that it was intentional. And so you have to overcome that. So when people say, "Well, I have a copy," okay, we will admit that, but it's going to be more work. And not only that, you are required to put people who would have inherited under the intestate rules on notice. So it basically automatically becomes an adversarial proceeding. And most of the time, when people are creating a will, it's because they don't want any controversy. Or, maybe they're disinheriting somebody and they don't want them to be part of the process. Well, when you have to admit a copy, that person is getting notice potentially, and they have an objection period to hire counsel and step in. And so it's really important. Now I know that remote online notary is becoming more prevalent. I actually became a remote online notary back when it was first introduced in Florida, but I don't recommend it for estate planning documents because, for one thing, we have some wonderful judges in our county who sign a lot of orders, like tens of thousands of orders. And as of I think a year, maybe more ago, I went to a judges luncheon set up by the bar. They hadn't had any electronic wills go through probate at that time. And at that time, it had been, we were able to do it at least for about 3 years. So I'm not in a position where I want to be, the trailblazer
Yeah.
on remote online notary wills. And also I think there were some interesting rules, especially in Florida, because we have large elderly population, and we have to be careful of fraud and things like that. There were some issues, and I don't recall exactly what they were, but I think that the witnesses for power of attorney had to be like present in the room with the testator, or with the principal. And that just wasn't practical for the remote online notary platforms, because every person has to log in and identify themselves. So anyway, original wills are still very much important today, and we encourage our clients to get everything signed wet signature professionally, if not with us, with a professional notary.
Yeah, and that's really the irony here, that maybe a lot of the public doesn't understand, but these rules are in place to actually protect you, right? Can you imagine what a mess it would be if anyone could just kind of write up a piece of paper saying, I'm so and so, and I leave all of this to so and so, and there was no mechanism in place, to confirm any of this. It would just be impossible to pass property at death. Right. So all of these
Yeah.
rules are in place to make sure that your wishes are honored. Just another reason why you need to be working with a lawyer. We
Yeah.
have 1 minute left. Nicole, remind us again the name of your firm, any contact information you want us to know about.
Firm is Loughlin Law PA. You can follow us on social media at Loughlin Law PA. Website laughlinlawpa.com. And phone number is 561-921-5751. Um, and we
Great.
work with people throughout the state, and other attorneys as well. If you have clients who have property in Florida and they're doing their estate plan with you in your jurisdiction, and you need help transferring condo in Florida, house in Florida, we're happy to help with that.
Amazing. Nicole, you're one of the shiny stars of the 2HL community. Thank you for being on the podcast,
Thank
and
you.
have a great weekend.
Thanks, you too.
All right, I'm going to hit end. Leighton will edit the rest of this out. Thank you, Nicole. We'll put this up on the YouTube channel, and it was great to see you. I'm glad to hear that things are going so well.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't realize I thought you wanted me to answer that first question after you recorded. So I'm sorry I didn't do like an intro right then and there.
Oh, no, this whole completely fine. Leighton will figure it out. This is all, this is fine, Nicole. It's totally fine.
Okay.
All right, enjoy the rest of your week. I'll talk